Hello and welcome to this video in which I'm building the Supermarine Spitfire Mark Ia starter set in 1/72nd scale from Airfix. If you enjoy this video and find it useful, please remember to like it below. While you're there, why not also subscribe to my channel, where you'll see plenty of other builds and new projects as soon as they're completed. The Supermarine Spitfire was the brainchild of designer Reginald Mitchell. The prototype flew in 1936, with aircraft reaching RAF squadrons in 1938. The legend of the Spitfire, with its sleek lines and elliptical wings, was born in the Battle of Britain in 1940, even though the more conventional Hawker Hurricane shot down more aircraft. To fly the Spitfire became the dream of every youngster, and the young men who flew the Spitfire was viewed as the elite. Numerous versions of the Spitfire and the naval Seafire were produced, the original Merlin engines being replaced by the more powerful Griffon in later variants. The last combat sortie by an RAF Spitfire took place in 1951 in Malaya. More than 20,000 Spitfires were produced, of which 240 or so still exist, and around 60 of those are airworthy. They remain a popular visitor to air shows to this very day. This kit is a starter set, so it comes with paints, a brush and glue. It's rated at skill level 1 and can be built by pretty much anyone. It also comes with one flying hour token. Now you can collect these as a member of the Airfix Club towards a free kit in the future, or you can donate them to Models for Heroes. Details of this charity are below. Back to the kit, and let's see exactly what you get in the box. We open it up at one end, and we can pour all the contents out. The first thing to mention is this plastic bag containing the parts for the kit. Most of them are on these two grey plastic sprues, and you can see there really are not too many of them. There's also a smaller bag containing the transparencies, the canopy and a small light cover. Then there is this plastic bag which has the tube of polystyrene cement and 4 paints. There's also a Humbrol No. 2 general purpose paintbrush. Then there is the instruction sheet, 4 pages of multilingual warnings and advice, followed by the well drawn and easy to follow instructions. There is a small decal sheet. These are water release decals, sharply printed in beautiful colours. These will make the kit look really good. And finally, on the back of the box is the painting guide, an indication of where the decals go. So that's what you get. Let's go ahead and start on the build. The first thing I'm going to do is some painting, so I need to make sure the paints are mixed well. Use a cocktail stick or a toothpick for this. The paints are acrylics, so you can wash the brush out in plain water. Now the inside of RAF aircraft at this time are painted a sort of pale olivey green. There isn't a pot of this included, but if you mix a little of the number 30 green into the number 90 sky, you get a pretty close version of it. You can paint this onto the inside of the cockpit. Now, as these are acrylics, you might have to go over the paint with a brush a few times for the paint to fully start bonding with the surface. Just keep going back over, but don't use too much paint. The same paint can be used on the inside of the undercarriage wells, internal walls, the seat and the control column. This kit has been around for a few years and the moulds are beginning to look a little bit tired. Where their seams are not as tight as they once were, you get this overspill which we call flash. Use a craft knife to trim it from the kit pieces. Inside the cockpit I am picking out various boxes and controls in black, and I'm also going to put black on the instrument panel. When this has dried, I'm going to apply a wash of well diluted black paint to highlight the structures in the cockpit. You can be as bold and as strong as you like with this. I'll also pinch some of the brown paint to look like leather on the seat. Now back to the instrument panel, and the decal sheet has the instruments printed on it. There are very few decals needed for this kit. Cut out the bit you need and soak it in a saucer of water. When it's released, I use tweezers to hold the backing paper and a brush to coax the decal into position. Once you're happy, leave it to dry thoroughly. Now I'm going to continue by assembling the cockpit, and I'm doing it slightly differently to the way it's written in the instructions, as I find this way easier. First, the seat gets glued to this frame at the back of the cockpit. Next, the rudder assembly is attached to the bottom of the instrument panel frame. After that, the joystick can be put into place. Next, I'm fitting the oxygen bottles here into the port side of the fuselage, followed by the seat frame. Then the instrument panel can go in, and the base slots into a recess on the seat frame as well. Now this way of doing it allows me to jiggle the alignment so everything is right before I attach the other side of the fuselage. It all fits together very nicely, and I'll clamp it up to set properly. You could use clothes pegs or sticky tape as well. While the fuselage is drying, I'll assemble the wings. There are two upper surfaces that fit on a single piece lower surface. These click into place and could be clamped or taped to set. Back to the fuselage, and it's time for the tailplanes. Now, on older kits I remember these being a nightmare to get level years ago, but now the mouldings are very snug and they sit right first time. The rudder slips into place easily too, and I'm going to let it all dry up. Maybe I'll go and make a cup of tea. So that done, it's time to attach the wings to the fuselage. Now the wings go in very well, you just need to bend them ever so slightly downward for the fuselage to snap into place properly. Again, more tape and let it all dry. When that's done, you can add bits to the bottom of the wing. The big radiator, the small air intake and the long oil cooler. Then you can fit the canopy. Now you only need a tiny bit of glue for this. I use a paper clip to apply it. Place the front of the windshield in place first, then press down on the back of the canopy and it snaps into place. You almost don't need any glue. And while all that sets up, I can get on with painting the undercarriage doors, the wheels and the propeller assemblies. With all the extra bits set, I can start painting the fuselage. I'm going to start on the underside. Again, don't apply too much at once. Use repeated long strokes where possible, and don't be afraid to use more than one coat. Use strokes along and across the fuselage to help minimise brush marks. And while that coat is drying, you can paint the tyres black. Next thing I'm doing is adding the decals to the finished paintwork. Now the serial numbers get put on first, as they've got to dry before the rest of the fuselage decals go on. You can, however, put the wing roundels on at this time as well. Once the serial numbers have dried, and I'm going to say give it at least a half hour, then the big side decals can go on. Now the reason we need the time between them is the squadron markings partially cover the serials, and we don't want the serials to move underneath the new decals. With those drying up, I can add the wheels to the undercarriage legs. There is a slightly oval shape to them, so the flat spot of the tyres can be set at the right angle to the bottom. Another job to do now are the exhausts. I painted them black first, then I'm going to put a gentle coat of brown over them. From a distance they're going to look a bit like sort of rusty burnt steel. I'm also slotting in the tail wheel now. It sits really well in place. Then the undercarriage legs. Now these have been a nightmare in many Spitfire and Seafire kits I've had from other manufacturers. But here they slot in really well and seem to sit at the correct angle straight away. Looking at the instructions, the legs need to be 4 degrees from perpendicular when viewed from the front and they need to be at 68 degrees from the resting ground line, and the very best of luck with that. To me, just outside of downward, viewed from the front, and just forward from downward from the side is good enough for me, and it seems to be pretty much where they want to sit anyway. The one slightly fiddly bit in this kit is this pitot tube that sits in the lower side of the port wing. That fitted, I'm also going to add my nicely painted exhausts before I assemble the propeller. This is a back plate on which the propeller assembly itself sits, and then the boss sits on top of that and holds it all in place. When it's dry, I can push the whole propeller assembly into the fuselage, and it is quite a snug fit, before attaching the radio mask behind the cockpit, and the kit is complete. Now, having heard some not very great things about this kit before, I was surprised at the quality of the fit and the ease of construction. The parts needed a little clean up here and there, but in many ways this is one of the better Spitfires I've made, and a world better than some from other manufacturers. I think it's a great little kit and a good introduction to the hobby. So, if you've enjoyed this video and found it useful, please do remember to like it below. And while you're there, why not subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, to see plenty more build videos as well as new projects as they're completed. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.